Rise and shine, porcupines. It's Algebra with Al time, and I'm your host, Al Rosetti, but you know that already. Anyway, we're taking a look at Chapter 5, Unit 6, the remainder and factor theorem. So students will be able to, after watching this video, students will be able to evaluate these functions using synthetic substitution, okay? The concept is remainder and factor theorems. The skill is evaluating. So, what do you say we get started? Here we go. All right, so using synthetic division to evaluate these functions. All right, so we're going to start with 2, right? And so synthetic division, if you remember, you're going to use just the coefficients. We're not using the variables here. We're going to divide by 2, but essentially you're really multiplying, but it is a division, right? So we're going to take the 2, we're going to write all the coefficients of the problem out. You got 1, -1, 6, and 5, right? How do you get started? Bring the first one down. Multiply. The 2, everything outside that line is multiplied by 2, right? Everything inside the line is added together. And when we're all said and done, when we put the 2 in there, what did we end up with? We ended up with 21. All right, now we're going to put we put the -1 in, we put the same coefficients, and what do, right? So, what do we end up with when we put -1 in there? So f of -1 equals 0. Okay, number 2, -x squared minus x plus 1. So we're going to once again use 2. The coefficients here are 1, -1, and +1, right? So the coefficients, 1, -1, and +1. All right, so here we go. Remember, put your 2 outside the line. Everything inside the line, we're going to be adding. Everything outside the line, you're going to be multiplying by 2. 2 times 1 is 2, add it together, you get 1. 2 times 1 is 2, add that together, you get 3. So when we plug 2 in, f of 2 equals 3. All right, when we plug -1 in, right, bring the 1 down, 1 times 1 is 1, add them together, you get 2. 1 times 2 is 2, add them together, you get 3. So f of -1, you get 3. All right, number 3. So f of x equals x squared minus 2x minus 2. Now, let me just tell you what they're getting you set up for here. Using synthetic division synthetic substitution, they're getting ready for you to use synthetic division to find the factors. This is basically you're practicing the procedures, okay? We don't really evaluate polynomials using synthetic substitution. It's a way of practicing for what you're really getting ready to do. But back to what we're doing. So when we use 2, you got 2 times 1 is 2, add it together, you get 0, 2 times 0 is 0. So when we plug in 2, we get -2. So f of 2 equals -2. Now, same coefficients. Now we're going to do with -1. Bring 1 down. -1 times 1 is what? -1. Add them together. What are you going to get? -3. Okay? -1 times -3 is +3. Add them together, you get 1. So when we put in -1, we get 1. And you have to show that. See how I wrote f of -1 equals 1? You have to show what you evaluated it with and what it equaled, just like that. And we use the f of x when we're talking about functions. Remember though, the f of x is just the same as y equals. So don't let that confuse you. All right, so we have x cubed plus 2x squared plus 5. We're going to use 2. We're going to use the coefficients of 1, 2, and 5. Bring down the 1. 2 times 1 is 2. Add them together, you get 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Add those together, you get 13. So when we evaluate it for 2, our answer is 13. So f of 2 equals 13. Now let's do the -1. Same coefficients. Bring down the 1. -1 times 1 is -1. Add them together, you get 1. -1 again, add them together, you get 4. So when we use f of -1, we get 4. All right, so the remainder and factor theorem. Okay, here we go. So we got x to the 4th plus 2x squared minus 9. Okay, so we're gonna do the exact same thing, right? We're gonna use synthetic division to to do this, right? So what are your coefficients? Okay? What are going to be your coefficients? Well, we know we're going to use f of 2 and f of negative 1 still. Those are the they want us to evaluate it for. But what are the coefficients here? So 1, 2, and negative 9, right? So there you go. Now here's the difference here. You see how the x cubed is missing and the x is missing? So if that's missing, you still have to substitute it in because you got to keep the proper place mark. Just like with money. You know, you got $1.09. You just don't get rid of the 0 and got 19. So if there's any variable missing from the highest exponent down to the lowest, you have to substitute it in with a 0. So to keep that place, and then you just add 0 to whatever you get. So when we got f of 2, we got 5. All right, so f of negative 1, right? Same thing. We got a 1 for the x to the 4th, a 0 because there's no x cubed. We got a 2 for x squared, a 0 because there's no x, minus 9. So now you have all the place values. All right, so keep going. And when we go through and substitute in negative 1, we end up with negative 6 as our answer. So f of negative 1 in this case equals negative 6. All right, let's look at number 10. Okay, so now you have x to the 4th minus 3x cubed plus 2x squared minus 2x. Notice, as compared to the other one, there's nothing missing in terms of you got the highest exponent, x to the 4th, so you got 3, 2, and 1. So you don't have to substitute in any zeros on this one. So you can see the difference visually. Take a look at the difference. You can see what was missing on the other one, and here everything, they have every one of them. All right, so we're going to start with 2. Our coefficients are going to be 1, negative 3, 2, negative 2, and positive 6. All right, now draw a line, bring down the 1. 2 times 1 is 2. Add them together, you get negative 1. Multiply that, you get negative 2. Add them together, you get 0. Negative 2 and negative 4, and you end up with positive 2. So f of 2 equals 2. All right, let's run it through with negative 1. Same coefficients. 1, negative 3, 2, negative 2, and 6. And when you do this, so bring the 1 down, right? Negative 1 times 1. Negative 3 and negative 1 is negative 4. Multiply that to positive 4. Add them together. And in the end, when we're all said and done, we get 14. So f of negative 1 is negative 14. Now here are your answers for the next 2 problems. And we're going to go to number 13. Okay? So, now, what they want us to do here is given a polynomial and one of the factors, find the remaining factors of the polynomial. Okay. So I told you earlier that they were having you use synthetic division to get you ready for finding the factors. Well, here it is. Okay? The first thing we're going to do is use synthetic division to try and find one of the factors. Now, basically, you're kind of left out in the open here, right? So, you got to remember when they give you the divisor, you're going to use the opposite value. So it's x plus 1. So we're going to use negative 1 to divide by. Same, everything else is the same. Bring down bring down the 1s. You get 0. Okay, so since it's 0, that means it is a factor. And what do you have left? Well, we have to we took the variables out in the beginning. We got to put them back in. So remember, the first one is your remainder. The next one is your constant, then your x and your x squared. And you can remember that because if we're dividing out an x cubed, then the factor will be an x squared. And then all we have to use is simple factoring technique to come up with the next one, and x squared plus x minus 2, and the factors of that are x plus 2 and x minus 1. So those are your 3 factors for number 13, starting out with synthetic division to eliminate the one they give us, and factoring the next problem to find the other 2 factors. All right, so the same thing applies here. We have x minus 1 we're supposed to divide by. So that means we're dividing by a positive 1. It's always the opposite value. Now, and when we do that, right, we're going to use 1, 1, negative 5, and 3. And all the steps are, all the other steps are the same, right? we're going to bring down the 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, add them together, you get 2. 1 times 2 is 2. Add them together, you get negative 3. It has to equal 0 or it wouldn't work. So we know that x minus 1 is one of the factors. We're left with what? X squared plus 2x minus 3, right? And what are the factors? Well, negative 3. That will multiply negative 3 and equal positive 2. Well, that would have to be x plus 3 and x minus 1. So there's your factors, all the factors, meaning if I multiply x plus 1 or x minus 1 and x plus 3 and another x minus 1 together, it would equal our original answer. So, all right, moving on to number 15. So given a polynomial and one of its factors, we're finding the remaining factors of the polynomial. Okay, so nothing changes here. We're doing the same thing, and let's take a look at it for a second. Are all the x values there? Is there any x's missing? Any x's missing from x cubed? No, we got x cubed start with, x squared, x to the first. We're good. Remember, we're going to divide by the opposite of the x plus 3. Opposite of plus 3 is negative 3. Our coefficients are 1, 3, negative 4, and negative 12. And let's just simply go through the process, right? How do we get started? A lot of times that's the problem that some students have. Like, how do you get started? They know, once they get going, they got it. But bring down 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Add that together, I get 0. Negative 3 times 0, obviously, is 0. Add that together, you get negative 4. And 3 times negative 4 is 12. And as you know, it has to equal 0, and it does. So what are we left with? We're left with x squared minus 4, because there's a 0 there. You should recognize that as a difference of two squares. That's x plus 2, x minus 2. That's the pattern. The only way to eliminate the middle term is to have exact same polynomials, different signs. So there are your factors. Okay, number 16. X cubed minus 6x squared plus 11x. Are there any x's missing? No, they're all accounted for. What are we going to divide by? The opposite of what they give us. So it's negative 3. We're going to divide by positive 3. We're going to draw our little L. We're going to write down our coefficients. 1, negative 6, 11, and negative 6. And here we go. How do we get started? Bring that first term down. 3 times 1, right, is 3. Add them together, you get negative 3. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Add those together, you get 2. And you end up at 0, which we knew we would. That's the way these problems are set up. And we're left with x squared minus 3x plus 2. Now, what are the factors? Well, 2 times 1, right? They both have to be negative. It could be positive 2 and negative 3. There's your factors. Good. There's your answers for the next problems. And that's it. Well, that's all we have time for today. I appreciate you being here. Once again, thank you. And remember, math, math, math. Get out and do some math.